For What by Fred Varley encapsulates our ideas about how we should remember World War I. Should we remember World War I as a glorious nation-building experience? Or should we think about, commemorate World War I in a way that emphasizes peace, in a way that emphasizes lessons learned, in a way that emphasizes what in the world was this horrible tragedy about?
War is now an industrial war, and this is what shocks someone like Varley. It's not a case of individual courage, it's a case of almost machine against machine, of people's bodies being blown to smithereens, not even being able to be recognized as who they were. It's an affront to individuality and an affront to everything that Varley believed in.
My hope is that the painting allows people to understand that their understanding of war and its commemoration should go beyond putting a poppy on their coat. Because to simply recognize that the war was bad and leave it there, I don't think is enough.
One of the bodies in the cart could have been my uncle. So how many Canadians died during the Great War? Something of the order of 60,000. What difference would those 60,000 make? Probably the bravest and best of the youth of the country would have made a terrific difference if they had lived to build Canada rather than be buried in France. I'm really interested in conveying the value, the Canadian value of conciliation, reconciliation, peacemaking, peace building, that wars certainly influenced our country, not necessarily for the better.
So Peace Quest is an effort that a group of us here in Kingston have set up to commemorate the 100th anniversary of World War I, but it's essentially about commemoration for peace. We want to ask questions about what causes peace? How do we remember war? And what did they die for? We were intrigued by Frederick Varley's painting, not just by the image that Varley provided us with. We were intrigued by the title that he gave his painting, For What? And so we thought that in 2 words. Varley was a member of Canada's famous group of 7 best known for their landscape paintings in the 1920s and 30s. But before that all unfolded in 1918, Varley was commissioned as a war artist during the final several months of World War I. And he painted this one scene that he must have witnessed, and in the background there are some temporary looking graves, white crosses, and in the foreground of this desolate, barren, grim landscape is a cart full of bodies waiting to be buried.
Varley, who went over to the war full of patriotic enthusiasm, like so many Canadians, it was going to be a great adventure. You were going to do something great and noble in the world. When he confronted the actual battlefield, I think it was a shock to his system from which he never really recovered.
Soil isn't normally this kind of shade. This is polluted by the experience that was held on that piece of property. It's ugly. It's ugly.
It's really a picture of desolation and carnage and loss of human lives. It's a horrible picture to look at.
Now that we know that it's titled For What, He's showing us the pointlessness of it, the brutality of it, the lack of humanity here.
For people like Varley, for people who really went through the First World War, there was a sense that they had seen madness, cruelty, something beyond their imagination. And I think that's what we need to retain, in Peace Quest. I think we need to retain this sense of this is just the raw horror, the shock, and the sheer madness of a war in an industrial age. I think what people like Varley realize... What Peace Quest is trying to do is open up a conversation about war and peace, and an adult conversation that's based on evidence, and it's based on research, and it's based on a very sober consideration of what we mean by war and what we mean by peace. If we look at what the government puts out in terms of war, say in the Citizenship Guide, which they've just brought out in hundreds of thousands of copies to educate new Canadians about what it means to be Canadian, and it's suffused with images of war, but none of them go in the direction of Fred Varley's painting, right? So, because all of these images that the government circulates about war are clean, they're exciting, they're adventurous, they're the boys' own annual version of war.
Our Peace Quest effort is all about memory, remembrance, commemoration of war, and asking questions about war, not accepting the official story that is now being retailed in English Canada that World War I and particularly the Battle of Vimy Ridge were hugely important nation-building experiences that deserve to be celebrated. We want to mark these various milestones of World War I in what we call lamenting the tragedy that is war and celebrating the dream that is peace. And so that, in a nutshell, is what Peace Quest hopes to be all about.